Marty's actually calling in from Los Angeles here this morning. So
that's early.
It's going to be. It starts with a 7.
Okay.
So when we take a look, and this is from 1987, and courtesy, I believe we're going to say, of ESPN and property of the National Hockey League. See the courtesy?
Yeah.
See what we're doing there? 1987 Stanley Cup, Marty McSorley being interviewed after they had just won. Look how young he is. Here's a couple things before Marty joins us. Look how young he is. And again, this is why you want to go and watch this video. Watch our show today. Look at the shoulder pads. Look at the size of them. It's like, what we used to wear in like mite hockey on this big-bodied guy. And here's the interview, and listen just how honest and how young. This is fantastic sound. You're going to love the pictures.
Any drier, they seem to find more and more champagne. We're all getting wetter. I'm with Marty McSorley. Marty, I know it's difficult. I've been here before. Can you try and put into words what the emotions are right now, what you're feeling?
It's like somebody lifted a bulldozer off your shoulders. It was just so much emotion, so much hyped up pressure inside that you had to win the Stanley Cup, and the guys were saying, we're going to win it for you, we're going to win it for you. And I had so much expectation, I couldn't realize what it was like. Finally, I'm holding the Stanley Cup, and it's a goal, the biggest dream of my life to win it. And it's just, I'm the happiest man in the world. I've reached one of the biggest goals of my life.
Are you happy about being able to share it with family, too? That was always something that I think meant a lot to everybody that plays, because we all grew up as kids with parents watching and wanting us to do well, and then when you finally win it, you not only win it for you, but you win it for them, too.
Well, my dad's always been there. He was always behind me. He was giving me so much great support, and I looked down after I handed the cup off, and he's at the end of the rink. He's got tears in his face. He's been here. He's been such a silent support for my whole career, and my name is on the Stanley Cup. They can't take it away from us. I don't care who looks at it, it's there, and I can't be happier right now.
That's great. How did it feel to carry that cup around, then when you passed it off?
Well, the guys were saying to me constantly, they were saying, just grab it, carry it. They said, we're going to win the cup for you.
Could you try and hit my mouth with a little of that?
Mark Messier pushed me, and he says, carry that cup. He says, carry it, because they've been there. They were saying to me the whole playoffs, we're going to get it for you, kid. We're going to get it for you. Do your job, work with us. And these guys are 19 to 20, as greatest guys in the world. They made this possible 2 years when I came here. They took me under the wing. They nurtured me every practice, brought me along, give me confidence. I love these guys.
Marty,
how
old were you when you started thinking of winning the Stanley Cup? We all dream of it as kids. Do you remember when you started dreaming about not only playing in the NHL?
Unbelievable. And guess who's calling now? Absolutely, all the way from Los Angeles, California, I believe. We go to the one and only Marty McSorley, who's a little older than that video that we just played for you on the air in 1987. Hey, Marty, my man, how you doing, brother? Thanks for joining me here today on Raw Mike Richards.
I'm doing great, thanks. I wish I was that age again, that's for sure.
Well, and you know what? When people see that, and none of us really, Marty, are in that kind of finer air where we played with, in our sport, in our craft, some of the best who ever played, who ever existed in that sport. You have that, and you look back at this young kid, with those little shoulder pads that you were wearing, and you see the excitement and the passion that you have and still, had back then. What would you say to the kid all these years later? Would you have changed anything?
Well, it's funny because I see a lot of young guys. I go to a lot of junior games. I'll wander into the locker room, say hi to the coaches or general managers that are a lot of the guys that I played with and against and had a ton of respect for. And you'll talk to the junior kids, and so many of them are such good young men. And I'll say to them, really enjoy the journey because it's such a great journey. And I'm like, climb over those obstacles and don't worry about how much you make or don't you sign for. Let the game take care of itself because it does. And if you do that, if you have that mindset of, boy, what a great opportunity here. I'm out here playing, doing a game that I love. It's a business, but at the same time, it's something that I really, really love. And if I could do anything different, I wouldn't have played hurt as much as I did. I would have, at times, I'd have shut it down and got healthy. But that's just so hard to do when you're dying to play, and they want or need you to play.
Now, I look at, and we're talking about, junior players who could possibly move on and play pro. You're looking at yourself, back in time, courtesy of that clip right there. But I'm just curious, the guy that's in the middle of it now. So the player that's still getting paid, he's at the top of his game, and it's kind of not working out. And I'm talking about Alexander Ovechkin. And a lot of people make a lot of comments about this guy, about what has happened and the reason he hasn't moved on. Do you have any feelings about an Alexander Ovechkin on why Washington hasn't moved on? And indeed, how much do you put on his shoulders?
Well, I made a comment about 4 years ago on the air, which I had a lot of flack for. Working with Jeff Merrick, who I really like, is a really good hockey man.
Yeah.
And Jeff said, well, Alex Ovechkin with an MVP caliber year. And I looked over and said, no, absolutely not. He's not the guy we want the young kids looking up to. He plays 3-minute shifts. He sucks the life out of his bench. Everything had to go through him. The power play had to go through him. Every power play is on for two minutes. Second and third line had no continuity, and the coaches were under pressure. I had heard that Dale Hunter was told by the owner, you can do whatever you want, but 2 guys are going to play, Salmon and Ovechkin, period. And so, you'd seen a number of coaches change. Now, Barry Trotz is a very good coach. And I think Barry Trotz understands what wins in the playoffs. Alex Ovechkin has to learn what playoffs represent and how you get there, and less goals can mean a much better player. And I know that there's guys saying, oh, you got to open it up and just let them play. You can't cheat to score in today's playoffs because you lose hockey games. Because odd man chances, other teams score goals. You have to play through the game. You can't wait for a bounce. In the regular season, you play back-to-back games against poor teams. They don't have a chance to study you as much or play, and you're going to score your goals, a lot more power plays. But everybody knows what people are going to do. Great players have to create from nothing. And that's what Sidney Crosby does. Guys like Kopitar, Getzlaf, they create from nothing. And I'm not sure if Alex Ovechkin had Datsuk had Igor Larionov, who was a phenomenal mentor for those young Russians in Detroit. And you saw so many of those young Russians in Detroit be very, very successful. And I think a guy like Larionov and Fetisov were great examples. Ovechkin was handed so much so early, and now he's got to kind of suppress his own fame a little bit and say, okay, what do I need to do, and allow Barry Trotz to coach him and play the game the way it's meant to be played. And if he doesn't score a goal, he can be a positive influence on that hockey team. I don't think he's grasped that yet. And I don't think the culture is quite there yet, and Barry Trotz is trying.
That's interesting, Marty, because I buy on to everything you're saying there. But let me add on to it here. This guy is 31 years old. We're not talking about a 22-year-old hockey player that's only been in the league for a couple of years. Has that timeline expired for Alex Ovechkin, where simply it cannot work in Washington under these circumstances, and they may have to blow this thing up?
No. I don't believe that at all.
Okay.
Because I think there was a wake-up call. It was not the last Olympics, the one before, when Datsuk took, 3 of the penalty shots, and they were in the shootout, I believe, against the U.S. They never used Ovechkin. The Russians never trusted him. And I think Alex Ovechkin, he's got to be a smart enough guy, and I know he's a competitor. We see that. We see how he loves to score and how he loves to compete. That's not a factor. If I saw him stand there and not compete, I'd really be worried. Mm-hmm. But I think that, guys, famous players, and it's not rightfully so, to use a guy like Dale Hawerchuk, for instance, that if they don't win, people think that they just didn't accomplish what they need to accomplish. Alex Ovechkin has to look at that and say, if I'm going to leave my legacy and my mark, I have to figure it out right now. And I think under Barry Trotz, he's made great strides, but I think these playoffs have to be a wake-up call for him, because Dale Hunter sat him on the bench, and they were actually a better playoff team when he did. And when Barry Trotz pulled them back, that has to tell Ovechkin something. So if you blow him up, if you're a team, do you want to add a $8, $9, $10 million player that you're not sure you can win the playoffs with? It would be really interesting to see how that played out if there was the option or the thought of trading him, but I don't think they are, and I don't think they need to blow it up. I think he's too much of a competitor not to go back to him and say, hey, let's figure this out.
We're in conversation with Marty McSorley here on RawMikeRichards.com. And, the way the game has changed, I thought it was interesting that Ryan Johansen had a lot to say about Ryan Kessler after the last game. And for what he had to say, I think a lot of people probably feel the same way. But my only question is, for someone like yourself who played the game, is that really the best way of going about it? Because I don't think necessarily a player stops doing it because his feelings were hurt in a post-game press conference.
Well, he's not going to. But I can tell you, the year after, Ryan Kessler scored 40 goals with Vancouver because everybody was checking the 2 Sedins, who were marvelous players. And the next year, I walked into the coaching room with one of the teams before the game. Coaches said, watch Kessler. We're going to challenge him to fight right off the get-go, and he'll fade and die because he won't meet that challenge. And I was like, really? They did. They challenged him to fight right off the get-go. He wasn't going to fight, and it just changed Kessler's whole persona. And so some of those guys, like I used to feel, why don't more guys challenge Chris Pronger to fight? Because he's dirty with the stick and everything else. Owen Nolan would, and I can tell you it certainly changed how people played against Owen Nolan. He'd go out, challenge a guy to fight, and then he could kind of just play his game. They're not going to fight him, and it kind of would screw up a guy like Pronger. And I think that, the same thing with Kessler. If Johansen just goes out in a 2-minute minor early in a game in a series that's 1-1 can really be advantageous over the course of a 7-game series. If Ryan Johansen goes out and says, okay, let's go, because Ryan Kessler made the mistake of dropping his glove with Ty Domi's son.
Yeah, that didn't
He's not
go
going to do that again.
No. But
yeah,
let me
he's
ask
not going to do that.
Let me ask you, Marty, though, that the way that these young guys, we talked about how they're wired now, and they train a different way than we did. I mean, the rules for the most part are different. But do you think because of all of that, that's the reason why we don't see guys challenging more guys on the ice, or is it just the factor of rule changes?
Well, the great thing about the game is more and more players are trying to be that first-line player, and I think that that's great. And there's fewer guys that look upon themselves as being grinders. And I think the mindset of third and fourth line guys is just don't get scored on, be defensively accountable. Hopefully they'll use me killing penalties, and maybe if somebody gets hurt, I'm playing on the first or second line. But they're not looking to be those type of players, and that mindset is gone. But if you look at the playoffs, I watched these games, and during the regular season, if this was one of the first 20 games of the season, there'd be 1 million penalties called. And the way that the game is played, the big guys mean a lot more in the playoffs because the rules are a lot looser. The game is a lot harder, a lot tougher. These guys are getting finished by everybody, every opportunity. And it's to say that the rules have changed and everything else, it's still playoff hockey. And I think that if Ryan Johansen just says to Kessler, backs up and says, let's fight, I would be really interested to see how Kessler reacts to the rest of the game.
Yeah, I would too. And the other thing, Marty, and let's even date this back to what Kessler did to Connor McDavid. I can't see Connor McDavid actually doing the same sort of thing, challenging him to a fight, and I think that would be foolish. But from your perspective, are you actually surprised somebody from the Oilers, or now with this series, somebody from the Predators didn't tap Kessler on the shoulder and say, okay, you're not going to do this crap anymore, I'm going to take care of this right now for you?
Well, Cassian did go after him at the end of the one game, or early in the series, if you remember. And the Oilers had a guy like Milan Lucic who can play good minutes, who's going to play in your top two lines.
Yes.
Now, there's a body that goes up against Kessler, and Kessler's not going to want any part of that. And, see, the Oilers weren't playing from behind. I mean, gosh, they gave up a 3-goal lead and a 2-goal lead. They blew them out 7-1, and the final game was 2-1. So, I mean, it wasn't like they were losing games and needed to do anything. They were in control of games and then lost control of it late in the game. So Kessler wasn't nearly as big a factor, I don't believe. There's a saying that if you can keep the other team's defensive players on the ice, you're going to win hockey games. So if Kessler's out there checking McDavid, keep putting them on the ice, and then if you're winning hockey games, great, because it throws the other team's bench off. Because their star players aren't playing. So in Edmonton's case, I look at it much, much different. I think Johansen, if he challenged him to fight, I would be really interested to see how that matches up for the rest of the series. Nashville's a little bit more of a grinding team than Edmonton was, and they may need that recipe in their whole team chemistry.
And Marty, following up on some of those names and the young stars, I mean, my God, when you look back, you playing with the guys you did, including the great one, then there was the next one, then there was, there's a lot of pressure on these young guys sometimes to almost put a league on their shoulders. And I take a look at two names in particular right now, and I'll start with Connor McDavid, but it's no particular order, but he is worth the price of admission, and an Austin Matthews. Are they themselves going to be capable of lifting profile for the NHL?
Oh, my God, they already have. It's been just unbelievable. 2 years ago, I was at the last game in Edmonton, and I can tell you the fans were so down, so disappointed, and it was really a really rough feeling. And I just kind of sat there and watched the fans and listened. And I'd been into 3 or 4 games that year. I'd gone into Edmonton and just sat in the rink and watched and listened. And you could see the team was trying. They had, Craig McTavish had drafted Nurse and Draisaitl, so the future was a distance off, and people overrated. Nugent Hopkins was a good draft pick. It wasn't a great draft. right?
Yep.
Taylor Hall. I mean, Sagan or Hall, and it wasn't Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews. It just wasn't. When they got Connor McDavid, my God, it lifted that whole team. Free agents were more than willing to sign there. Would Lucic have signed with Edmonton without Connor McDavid?
Nope.
Would Todd McClellan have taken the job?
No. You're absolutely right.
Right? I mean, so that's how he's transformed there. And free agents, I mean, you see the people jam in the building when the team's on the road. They really feel like they're back. And he's transformed all Western Canada, because the people in Saskatchewan, all through Alberta and into Manitoba watch that. And then what Austin Matthews has done now, it's going to be a destination for free agents now, because with that guy on the ice, they believe they can win hockey games. If you get good goaltending and you've got players himself and you complement them with one or two more free agents, and you get some of your young guys, because you got to have some young guys playing, it just transforms everything across Canada, and it kind of gets rid of that mentality you heard 2 years ago that free agents don't want to sign in Canada. There's taxes, different things. They can't, other free agents aren't going to come. Well, they're going to come now. They really are, and it's great for Canada. It's great for hockey across Canada. The people are so fired up with the amount of teams in the playoffs and having so much success.
Marty, thanks so much for taking the time and joining us here on the show today. It's been a long time since I've seen you. I think the last time was in Calgary. We
did the dinner together.
We did the dinner. I think you also told me, because I think did you not work the racetrack at Cayuga? Isn't that what you told me?
I did. I used to run around there and sell soda on the Friday night races and at the Speedway, and I used to work security at the drag strip in Cayuga. Bought me my hockey equipment, my skates every fall. And so that I could keep playing. Family of 10 kids, you had to find a way, right?
Oh, I guess you did. 10 kids. Hey, Marty, you're the best, man. Thanks so much for joining us here today. I appreciate it. And I hope I get a chance to see you sometime. It was fantastic here today.
Thanks very much, guys. I appreciate it. I'm really enjoying the playoffs.
That is Marty McSorley joining us from Los Angeles here today, and great to catch up with him.
Great. Just the way he kind of broke everything down. You know what? This guy should be on TV full time.
Oh,
What? We just become best friends? Yep.